Hey everybody, I am Jeff Williams with Armor Insurance Agency located right here in Miles City, Montana. And today, I think I've got a pretty interesting topic for you guys. So I found out that in the state of Montana, there are 324,000 businesses registered and in good standing in the state of Montana. And that is the highest number ever. In 2024 alone, there were 63,000, little over 63,000 new businesses that registered with the state of Montana. And it's estimated that somewhere between 200 to 250,000 of them need commercial auto insurance. So I figured, let's make a video for you guys. So here it is. Folks, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish today. Now, this video is only meant to be about 10 to 15 minutes long. And this topic is going to take a whole lot longer than that. So what I got to do is break it down into two simple categories. I'm going to take one of those categories and I'm going to break that down into two subcategories. And then we're going to focus on one of those subcategories. And what I want to get across is what you get with that insurance policy. And when I talk about what you get, what I mean is what are the coverages that you're going to get? And we're going to talk about a numerical system that is used to align your coverages with your vehicle. So we're going to talk a little bit about that system and how it applies to you. And we're going to address the covered risks, and we're going to talk a little bit about the exclusions, and we are going to talk about how the companies are going to value your vehicle. And that'll be the program for today. If you're ready, let's get started. So first things first, let's talk about how we're going to take this vast array of vehicles that can be covered by a commercial auto policy and split it into two different categories. Well, we're going to do that based on weight. We're going to take a weight of 10,000 gross vehicle weight, and gross vehicle weight is the weight of your vehicle with you in it, your fuel in it, and all your equipment. If you're less than 10,000 pounds, then you're going to fit over here in this lighter weight vehicle category. And if you're more than 10,000 pounds, you're going to fit over here in this heavier weight category. This lighter weight category, we're going to call that the business auto and contractors. Now, contractors get their own little subgroup here because their risks are different than the risks of someone with a typical business auto policy. The contractors, just a huge number of them that you could have in terms of specialization within that, but they're typically going to have maybe a truck, and it's going to be, when I say truck, I mean like a pickup truck, a lighter weight vehicle, a utility type of vehicle, and they're going to be out at a job site, which is different than the types of risks that someone with a standard auto policy, if a standard business auto policy, if they're out doing a business delivery, or maybe they're out doing sales calls, it's just different risks. So then we look over here at this heavy category, and the heavier category is your heavy truck and trailer. Now, the heavy truck and trailer category is perfect for businesses that have semis or maybe specialized equipment like a garbage truck or a dump truck, maybe a pump truck, anything along those lines. But the subspecialization within that can be significant, and really that deserves a video of its own. So our focus is going to be on the lighter weight vehicles today, specifically the business auto policy. The contractors, they deserve their own video as well. So the business auto policy is what we're focusing on today, and we're going to focus on the coverages first, and that is coming up. Okay, it's very important to understand the coverages that you get under a commercial insurance auto policy. And specifically, we're looking at those lighter weight vehicle category that we called business auto and contractors. And specifically within that category, we are looking at the business auto category. The coverages that you get there are very similar to the coverages that you have under a personal auto policy. And most people are kind of familiar with the coverages that you get under a personal auto policy, but we're just going to review them very quickly. There are four coverages that people get: coverage A, B, C, and D. Coverage A is liability coverage. Liability coverage is the type of coverage that covers the other guy for bodily injury and death and property damage. Coverage B is medical payments coverage, which basically covers the person that's in your vehicle, person or persons that are in your vehicle. There is coverage C, which is uninsured or underinsured, and that pays for the medical expenses when the person who was actually liable for the accident wasn't you, it was the other guy, and they did not have any insurance, which in the state of Montana is about 1 in 12 vehicles, or they did not have sufficient insurance. So let's say they had the lower limits and your medical expenses, or for you or any of the people in your vehicle, were significantly higher than what their coverage limits were. Well, that's when it would kick in and help pay those costs. Then there's coverage D, which is damage to your vehicle, and that includes collision coverage, which is when you hit something, an object, or you roll over, or comprehensive, which is basically everything else unless it's excluded. Now, the difference between, say, a personal auto policy and the business auto policy is that in a personal auto policy, each one of those coverages is purchased separately. In a business auto policy, they bundle coverage A, the liability coverage, and coverage D, the damage to your vehicle, which includes collision and comprehensive. There is a second very important difference between a business auto policy and a personal auto policy. And that difference really is the numerical system that is used to align your vehicle and your vehicle's coverage that is utilized in a business auto policy, but is not utilized in a personal auto policy. And it's very important to get those numbers right. They will be on your declaration page, and if they are not there, then there won't be coverage for it. So we're covering that next. It's important to understand that the numerical system that we are about to talk about applies only to the business auto coverage. The other categories of coverages, they have their own numerical system, and there is no overlap between the types of coverages. So the business auto coverage will utilize the numbers 1 through 9 and number 19. Each one of those numbers is a symbol, and the symbol represents a type of coverage. And what is effectively happening is that your coverage is being aligned to the specific vehicles that you have. These numbers will show up on your dec form or declarations form. So let's go ahead and go through each one of the numbers and let you understand, or help you understand, what they mean. So let's start with symbol 1. Symbol 1 is the broadest coverage that you can possibly get, and it's called any auto, and it literally means that. Any auto that you use, your business uses, during that policy period is covered, which includes ones that you own, ones that you rent, ones that you hire, ones that you lease, ones that you borrow. Everything, anything and everything you use, well, it's covered. Because it is so broad, it's a great one to have. But because it is so broad, a lot of carriers don't want anything to do with it at all. And so they don't offer it. The next broadest coverage is symbol 2. Symbol 2 is owned autos only, and it can be broken down into 2 different components. The first component is going to be private passenger only, and the second component is other than private passenger only. Now, the private passenger only would be something like, pick any kind of car. Any kind of car that may be used on a sales call, that's a private passenger only. Other than private passenger is going to be things like a delivery truck, maybe a bus, maybe a trailer, maybe a motorcycle, anything other than a private passenger car. So that symbol 3 symbols 3 and 4 break symbol 2 down into those 2 component parts. Symbol 3 is your private passenger only, and symbol 4 is covering the other than private passenger. So let's say you had a business that only needs the insurance for delivery of, delivery vehicles. They don't have any other cars that, there's no sales cars happening. Well, then that's the number 4 would be the symbol you need. Symbol 5 is not used in the state of Montana. Symbol 5 was created to comply with the no-fault states, but Montana is an at-fault state. And by at-fault, I mean if you're liable for an accident, then you're responsible, you're going to pay for the damages. And in a no-fault state, well, that's not the case. Nobody's held at fault and everybody's insurance pays. But that's not Montana. Symbol 6 is also not utilized in the state of Montana. Symbol 6 is used to comply with the states that require uninsured insurance coverage for motorists. Montana does not require that residents purchase an uninsured motorist policy. Montana does, by law, require agents like myself to offer that type of coverage anytime someone is purchasing a policy for car insurance, whether it's private or if it is for a business. Now, symbol 7, most restrictive ever. It is literally called the specifically described auto, and it means just that. You will have on your declaration sheet of your policy specifically listed which vehicles you have covered. And if it has the little 7 symbol beside it, it means nothing else is going to be covered. So let's say something along the lines of you purchase a new vehicle, and with all the other policies, including policies that are your personal auto policies, there is a time period that you can actually go buy a vehicle and drive it off the lot, and you have coverage. And for most of the other commercial auto policies, it's about 30 days. But with this particular symbol, that will not apply. You drive it off the lot, you don't have coverage, and if something happens, well, you're out of luck. There is symbol 8 and symbol 9. Symbol 8 is hired autos only, which means that it is covering any vehicle that you lease, that you hire, that you rent, or that you borrow, with the notable exception of borrowing vehicles from employees. If you need that type of coverage, then you need symbol 9. Symbol 9 is the one that covers your vehicles that your employees own but are using for the purpose of your business. A good example of that is going to be like a pizza delivery place. If you're making pizzas and the people that are delivering your pizza are using their own car to go make that delivery, then this is the symbol you have, because if you don't have it and they are liable for a wreck and someone gets hurt, you will be held liable. It was your business that they were out there working at. And then there is symbol 19. Symbol 19 is for mobile equipment. And mobile equipment, this symbol is used for those mobile equipment that are out on the road that are not subject to the financial responsibility laws. And so if you have mobile equipment that's going to be on a road that you need it for, then this is the symbol for you. In the state of Montana, there are certain mobile equipment like tractors that are exempt from financial responsibility, and I actually have done a blog on that. And if you're interested in that, you can just check our website and go to our blog, and you'll see that one. So that is what I've got for you with regard to the symbols and the system that's utilized. So let's move on. So I want to address a couple of issues that you might be wondering about after we have just gone through that list of the different numerical symbols. Previously, I have said that you bundle both the liability and the physical damage coverage. However, with symbol 1, because it is so broad, it is only a liability coverage. Any vehicles that you have, even though you have very broad coverage with the liability coverage, you have no physical damage coverage. So in order to get that physical damage coverage, you would have to add additional symbols. If you add additional symbols, well, which ones do you add? And it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you have vehicles that you own, then you're going to want symbol 2. If you have vehicles that you hire or lease, well, then you're going to want symbol 8. Symbol 2 and symbol 8 include liability insurance and include physical damage. So why in the world why wouldn't you just get 2 and 8 to start? Why would you need symbol 1? There are some specific instances where symbol 2 is not going to cover things like if you have independent contractors working for you and they're using their own vehicles, the liability coverage under symbol 2 is really only on your vehicles. So if an independent contractor is working for you, well, they're doing your business. And if they're liable, then you have an exposure there. And that's where symbol 1 would cover. There's more of them that are similar to that. And as far as symbol 8, why in the world would you need to add symbol 1 to symbol 8? Well, symbol 8 only covers those formally hired contracts. Or if you borrow a vehicle or a trailer, it has to be from a business that specifically rents that type of equipment that you were borrowing. If it was an informal, so you borrowed a neighbor's trailer or vehicle, that is actually not covered. And that's what symbol 1 would cover for you with regard to the liability component. It's also important to understand that with symbol 7 may also not have a physical damage coverage because some people might eliminate that coverage for a specific vehicle because, say, the age of the vehicle, and it doesn't make sense to carry the collision and the comprehensive if it's a really old vehicle and is really not worth much and you want to try and decrease your premium. It's also important to understand that symbol 9 is liability only. Remember, the coverage that is covering your liability exposure for your employees when they're driving their own vehicles. You do not have an insurable interest in your employee's vehicle. Therefore, you cannot insure the property damage. It's up to your employee to maintain the appropriate property damage for their vehicle that they're using to execute the responsibilities of their job for your business. Another little point that you're going to want to know is that if you have liability coverage on this business auto policy, it is going to cover temporary substitute vehicles. And the definition requires that your vehicle be disabled. So let's say your vehicle broke down, and because it broke down, you had to take it into the shop, and you either borrowed or rented or hired a vehicle to use in its place. In that scenario, your insurance will apply to that borrowed, rented, or hired vehicle. Oh, mobile equipment. That's the last one. If you have mobile equipment, take a forklift and you're putting it on a car carrier to move it to a different location. It will be covered if you have symbol 19, the mobile equipment symbol, then it's covered in transport. But it's not going to be covered when it's getting loaded or offloaded from whatever you're transporting it on. Let's move to the next part. So I just wanted to cover, before we move to exclusions, I just want to cover who's actually covered under this liability insurance. And real quick, if your name's on the declaration page, you're covered. Your employees are covered. Anyone that you allow to drive the vehicle, you've given your permission to drive the vehicle, well, they're covered. Let's volunteers, for example. Who's not going to be covered is, say your vehicle broke down and it went to a shop and they thought they fixed it. They were driving it around to make sure that it was fixed and got into an accident that they were liable for. Well, that employee of that body shop should have coverage through the body shop, and your insurance is not going to pay for that. In addition, if you leased a vehicle and the owner or employee of the company that you leased it from or rented it from or borrowed it from is driving that vehicle either out to your spot or they're picking it up from you and they get into an accident, well, again, your insurance is not going to pay for that. They should have their own insurance that will pay for that. So let's talk about exclusions. So I briefly want to cover some exclusions to the liability in this business auto coverages. Basically, if you expected the injury, so you hit somebody on purpose, it's not going to cover that. Any kind of work-related injury, so if you have an employee and the employee drives the vehicle and is liable for a damage, liable for an accident, if your employee got hurt, it's not going to pay for that. That's what workers' comp is going to pay for. If you're transporting, let's say you make widgets and you're going to a trade show and you've got widgets in the back of the vehicle and you get into an accident and those widgets get destroyed or damaged, the policy doesn't pay for that. If you have, let's say, a Sprinter van and you're loading your widgets into the Sprinter van and they get damaged as you're loading it, the insurance is not going to pay for that. Let's say you move chemicals, and if you're moving chemicals and an accident occurs and those chemicals get spread all over the road, and the cleanup with that, any kind of pollution, unless it's specifically in the policy, i.e. you've bought a pollution policy with this and as a endorsement, then it's not going to cover that. If you are participating in any kind of organized racing event, it won't pay for any kind of liability that comes out of that. Let's briefly cover the property coverages. With regard to property, we know that the physical damage coverage is collision, when you literally hit another object, so in a wreck or maybe hit a tree. Alternatively, it's a rollover. And comprehensive. And comprehensive is basically everything else unless it's excluded. Now, in a business auto policy, you generally have the opportunity to say, I want a named peril, which will cost less, or I want an open peril. And the perils are the risks that are covered. If you have a named peril, then there are specific risks that are going to be covered. Those specific risks that are covered generally in a named peril form are going to be fire, lightning, explosion, theft, windstorm, hail, earthquake, flood, vandalism, and any kind of sinking, burning, collision, or derailment of a conveyance that is transporting your vehicle. In an open peril, it is basically covered if it's not excluded. Let's talk about valuation. So how much is an insurance company going to pay in the event that you experience a loss? It depends on the scenario. If it is a partial loss, or if it is a complete or total loss. If it is a partial loss, they have three options. They can pay for it outright, they can repair it, or they can replace it. If your property was stolen and then subsequently recovered, at the insurance company's option, they might return it to you, having fixed any damage. In the event of a total loss, the insurance company is going to use a valuation method called actual cash value. And actual cash value takes the replacement cost, what it would cost to replace your vehicle in today's market, and subtract depreciation from it. And you get whatever that number comes out to be. That's valuation in a nutshell. Let's look at a few final thoughts. Now, we know that all Montana businesses that have a vehicle are going to need a commercial auto policy. It's just that simple. When we talked today, we split this vast array of vehicles into two main categories and then looked at the lighter vehicles. We looked specifically at a subcategory of the business auto policy. Now, with that, we noted that it was very similar to a personal auto policy in that the coverages are the same, meaning coverage A, liability, coverage B, medical pay, coverage C, uninsured, underinsured, and coverage D, which is damage to your vehicle, or also known as collision and comprehensive. What we didn't know, but know now, is that in a business auto policy, the liability coverage, coverage A, and the damage to your property, coverage D, are generally bundled, but it depends on which symbol that you're actually using. Now, you can add the additional coverages of MedPay and uninsured and underinsured to your coverages. We also covered some exclusions, and we did a lot of discussion about the liability coverages and the property coverage. And with regard to the property coverage, we did cover the specific risks in the event that someone had a named peril policy versus an open peril policy. And we talked about how insurance company is going to value any kind of loss, depending on whether it is a partial loss or a complete loss. So that is kind of what sums up what we talked about today. Okay, folks, well, magic ends here. I hope it was helpful. I hope I was able to provide some knowledge for you. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy putting these things together for you. If you're considering purchasing any kind of commercial auto insurance, give us a call if you have any questions. We're right here in Miles City, but we can handle policies throughout the entire state. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And that's all I got for today. Bye now.